Happy Saturday, Risers. Saagar and I are back to take another look at some of our favorite segments from the week. We had a lot of great guests on this week, of course. Michael Brooks joined us to discuss the ongoing attempts to tank the Sanders campaign following the Senator's big win in Nevada last weekend. David Pakman hopped on the show to discuss the possibilities for a contested or negotiated Democratic convention. And, of course, we are joined by a number of incredible guests on Wednesday for our coverage of Tuesday night's debate back in South Carolina.
But the overarching theme of this week was how the Democratic establishment and donor class have been reacting to Bernie Sanders cementing his frontrunner status heading into Super Tuesday next week. Before the caucuses even began in Nevada, establishment Democrats were readying a new wave of Russiagate attacks on the senator. But as Rolling Stone's Matt Taibbi told us on Thursday, that strategy might backfire on the Democrats yet again.
Yeah, I think the remarkable thing about this story is the degree to which they appear to genuinely think it's going to work. This story very unsubtly was, it came out in the Washington Post the day before the caucus. It was so obvious that even Sanders, who's been kind of shaky on this issue, he had to point it out. But they clearly somebody thought this was going to have an impact on the caucus, and it was a blowout of historic proportions. This coupled with the rising approval ratings of Trump, who's gotten like a 6-point bump since the latest iteration of Russiagate came out. I don't know how much more evidence they need that people just don't really care about this issue.
So true. It could not be a greater repudiation of Russiagate that Donald Trump is president and Bernie Sanders is looking like he's going to get the Democratic nomination. Like, people just looked at this and were like, yeah, we don't care.
Right, and that the intelligence community is like, both are Russian assets at the exact same time.
Right, and you're like, wait, how does that work again?
If you guys know this meme, it's like that.
Right. I mean, the funny thing is, too, this wasn't particularly new. They said the same thing about Bernie back in 2016. Remember, there was like, they were trying to help Bernie in the primary, and then they were trying to help Trump in the general election, and clearly that didn't particularly resonate with people.
It's just so stupid.
So there you go. Yeah. All right, not only are establishment Democrats struggling to adjust to their new reality, but the Democratic donor class is also experiencing something of an identity crisis. During Tuesday's debate, the audience, which was primarily made up of donors to the various campaigns, as well as those that could afford the more than $1,700 price tag for a ticket, audibly jeered Sanders after nearly every answer, particularly after the senator went after billionaire former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. The Intercept's Ryan Grimm joined us on Wednesday to break down the debate, and here's what he had to say about the rowdy anti-Bernie crowd.
In the past, that was always okay to have them sitting there because they liked all the candidates on stage. And so each one would get a little golf clap.
They probably donated to each one.
They donated to all of them.
Right.
They have a favorite probably. Yeah. But they're fine with all of them.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. They're not fine with all of them anymore.
Right.
And so you can't have these donors in these events anymore because they're not going to behave themselves like they used to. And so you saw this booing and this hooting and hollering. And it was kind of like a primal scream of the dying establishment.
Yeah. I love that. Primal scream of the establishment.
I think I need a tattoo that says that.
Ryan's got a way with words. He's right. That is really what it was, is that in the past, because they bought everybody up on the stage, it was all good no matter who won. That's my that's my guy, that's my boy, that's my...
they win no matter who wins.
Yeah. But now... it's a new day.
It's a different day. I also like how he laid out, it used to be, okay, if you're going to have sort of endemic corruption throughout this whole process, this was one of the lesser goodies. It's the lesser evil. Okay, they get a ticket to the debate, big deal. But now, even that is really not acceptable because it does influence the way people think about these debates and view them and process who did well and who didn't. When you hear the audience with such a strong reaction against one candidate.
Yeah, that's when it's...
yeah.
something. Finally, with all of the talk of a contested convention in light of Sanders' surge with voters, we thought we'd revisit our discussion with Yvette Alexander from the Knight Foundation. They just released a really interesting new report on the nearly 100 million eligible voters that stayed home on Election Day 2016. It revealed that many non-voters distrust the current democratic process. Imagine that. Let's take a look.
Some of the things that we found that united them more was a lack of trust in our election system in general. They were more likely to doubt that elections were tallied accurately, that elections represented the will of the people, for example. And they were also more likely to engage less with news and information and to say that they felt uninformed on candidates and issues come election time.
So what was
I love that
interesting?
interview.
Yeah, it was such a fascinating study because this is the largest group of voters in the country is non-voters. So what are the commonalities? What can you say about them? And one of the common threads was that they felt like the system was rigged.
Yeah.
And so when you see things like the shadow app in Iowa, when you see Democrats blatantly, I mean, we covered this week how one was on MSNBC blatantly say the public doesn't get to decide the nomination. We, the party elites, get to decide, and then we'll let them vote for president, was basically how he phrased it. And when you see those things, how can you blame them for feeling like their vote doesn't count, like it's really not worth it to engage?
Yeah, I know I bring this up every time we talk about this, but Chris Arnott, he wrote the book on this, Dignity, and he always talks about non-voters and the way that they look at the political process. Why register to vote? That means jury duty. Jury duty means having to miss your job. You could get fired. Your boss might be cool with this. Why go, looking at forms? Like forms are things that they associate with bureaucracy that ends up trying to screw them. So like many of the institutions that are built around voting and the way that we have our democratic process all get played out, just trying to take time off work to go to a caucus and then seeing that the caucus doesn't even end up mattering. All of these things go to a deep cynicism. Americans don't trust their institutions. Some of them want to burn it down. They think the system is rigged. Why do people stay home? Because they don't think anything will change, and somebody has to give them a reason to hope, and that's really what they're all waiting for.
That's it. AOC also talks about this very eloquently, not just about the actual pragmatic concerns, which are a real barrier.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, as a mom with, plenty of privileges, just like it's a pain to get your kids and go to the thing, like it's a real cost, let alone for a working class person who may have a job that conflicts, for whom there's a real barrier, maybe even to travel to the caucus or the primary site, et cetera. There's also an emotional investment, though, too, which is a real thing, that you bother to emotionally invest in a particular outcome, to believe in a candidate, to believe that this system is going to work out for you. Like that exacts a sort of psychic toll, too, that shouldn't be underestimated.
No, certainly. It's a big deal. And I love that. I really encourage everybody to go read about that. It's very interesting about the biggest block of voters in this country, non-voters. And we should learn about them as much as possible and bring them into our political process.
Something we really try to think about and focus on this show, too. All right, that does it for us. We're going to be back later with our recurring segment where we break down the week that was in media mishaps.
And tomorrow we're going to be back for another round of #RisingQs. We'll see you then.